Well, welcome. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. I can tell you that my presentation will be a little different than everybody else's. No videos, and I will not be going in tremendous detail. That was done yesterday by Francois Berthet, our Senior Vice President of Safety and Licensing from Areva in Paris, who went through a lot of the technical questions that I think were addressed today by NuScale, Geotachi, and Westinghouse. So I'm only going to be going at a high level. He went through that in, I think, tremendous detail. Today, I want to give a little bit of an introduction, or maybe a reminder about Areva, a little bit of the things that we're doing in new builds and what we do as a company in a larger scale. So I think that will be a little bit of a different twist. I know I'm the last speaker and I'm before you in some source of food, so I will try not to use my full allocated time, but I also will hope to address any questions you might have. So from my background, if you heard it, and some of the background you hear, you may not understand it, but I probably had spent 3/4 of my career working in senior positions at nuclear sites and in corporate positions. An AEP is an American Electric Power, which is by the fourth largest utility in the United States. So I kind of come at it from a unique position now, having worked at Geotachi and Areva, from understanding how utilities and vendors per se try to do business. And it is fascinating because the two things I would tell you that I've learned is the vendors need to understand how the utility business model works better, and the utilities need to understand that the vendors do not make nearly as much money as they think they do. So if those two things will work better together, I think the relationship will continue to improve. But that is an interesting being on both sides of the equation and really realizing what's at odds at times, especially in difficult times around the world with the recessionary or not recessionary, or maybe going back into a recession period. These things come at odds, especially when you're talking about large capital-intensive projects. So let's start with what I want to talk about today. Areva is the worldwide leader in nuclear power. As a company, it gross figures $89 billion after the sale of transmission and distribution to Alstom, still around 8 or 9, maybe close to 10 billion here soon. And we are a nuclear player. We source two things: not only nuclear power, but we also are in renewable energies. Although bioenergy and wind may be of less extent today, we did recently purchase, about a year ago, a company called Areva, which is in the United States. And we have actually recently won 2 major contracts that will exceed over $1 billion in work. That facility is on the west coast of the United States. So we play largely in the nuclear area, but we're also playing in renewables. We kind of can do it all for you. I guess you could say, from a standpoint of not only renewables, but from a standpoint of nuclear power, we do everything. We mine uranium, we convert it, we mix it, we enrich it, we sell fuel rods, we provide services to nuclear plants, we build nuclear power plants. Areva is in nuclear all the way. And we provide those services throughout the world. And we'll talk a little bit about how we position ourselves and what we do in the U.S. I think there's a bit of a feel that our presence in the U.S. is minimized and not as large. I think I'll show you some statistics that is not true, that we are probably, from a revenue standpoint, the largest player in the U.S. today. Although over time that could change. Obviously, with Westinghouse in the process of building reactors today and soon more, they may grow on the revenue side from that, obviously. But today, we're much more of a presence than many maybe realize. What we do, I think I highlighted it. We do it all when it comes from the standpoint of nuclear energy. We are the largest nuclear player in the world. We're all over the world. I'll show you some statistics of that. We also uniquely do recycling. And we also believe that renewables is an important part of your green portfolio. And we realize that relationships need to be developed to do this. We partner with a lot of players in the nuclear industry. So when we say we do it all, but we do it with a lot of partners to make that happen. Areva across the globe, from a market leadership standpoint, You can see statistically, if you can see the statistics, I'll highlight some of them. We're balanced presence across the world. In France, actually 56% of the workforce is there, but only 39% of the revenue. So I think there's probably an inverse impression. It's the opposite of that. If you look across into North America, 17% of our revenue and 15% of the workforce. Actually, I think those numbers are a little bit larger today. Some of these may be dated. And you can see that in the Asian Pacific area, we are developing in those countries. 17% of our revenue is there, a lower sense of our workforce there, but obviously we are very interested in working here in India to deploy our reactor, and we envision that those numbers will hopefully grow over time, and we'll definitely engage the local supply chain to make that happen, and we'll procure and do most of our work as we can in those countries we work. But where we have a unique capability, and it makes sense for us to do that, we will do that in our manufacturing facilities, but we will deploy our technology by using the facilities that exist for helping to grow those facilities in those countries we are doing major work in. A lot of folks, and I put this up here and it seems really simple because we did it really simple. I have folks who are unsure how Areva is organized because it's viewed to be so large and somewhat complicated. This model is the same model that is used worldwide. So very simply, our major business sectors are across the board, from mining, front end, to reactors, to back end, and renewables. There's a supervisory board and an executive board. I think one thing, the very reason we brought this slide up is Areva's in the news quite a bit, as are other technology providers, and as Corey mentioned, NuScale has been in the news quite a bit. But we just had recently, in the past several months, a change in our CEO, which kind of got a lot of notoriety. We now have our new CEO is Luc Orcel, who replaced Anne Laverjan after her 10-year term. And I think importantly, Luc Orcel has made a number of adjustments, but overreachingly, the supervisory board and executive board and the actual organization that you see here today is the same organization that remained in place. So there has not been drastic changes from that standpoint in how we're aligned. We have an engineering and projects organization that supports all these businesses that we have, and it's a centralized organization. We have the same model in the U.S. as we do in France. Areva in the United States, we're $2.2 billion of revenue from a #1 supplier of nuclear energy currently on that line in the U.S. We have 40 years providing services in the United States, growing our renewable base, and we have over 5,000 employees who are actually working in the United States, and you can see by the map the deployment of those folks from the west coast of the United States to the east coast. Our centers of high employment are in the Virginia area, Lynchburg, Virginia, and actually in Richland, Washington, where we do our nuclear fuel. So our presence is pretty significant. We compete just like all the other reactor providers in these markets. Our presence and our investments in the U.S. are significant, and currently one of the bigger investments that we're looking at to make is an enrichment facility to be built. We have delayed that for 1 year. Obvious reasons. The market has somewhat changed a little bit, but also we believe we will ultimately move forward with that, but that will be a timing issue. The envisionment of the number of reactors that are going to be built in the U.S. as quickly as we all thought has slowed, and thus the need to move so fast, although we have contracted for over 80% of the output of that facility already. So this will be just a timing issue for us. So we'll talk a little bit about reactors and the offers that we have. We'll talk just briefly about the EPR, which I think everybody is well aware of, and then we'll move from there. And a very detailed technical discussion was had yesterday, but the EPR, likened to a news event, has probably been one of the most newsworthy reactors in the world. We were the first mover in Finland, and obviously that plant is still under construction with our design intent to be done by 2013. And as a result of that, we have